Alex Jensen's 2025 and 2026 Utah men's basketball coaching staff is set. Andre Miller's not on it. Why is that? We're going to discuss on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time tuning into our show, make sure you like and subscribe. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. You can take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no space, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. My name is JT Wistrcill, excited to be joined on this show by Utah rivals Alex Markham. We're going to talk a little bit of recruiting, also talk about some names to watch for this fall that got people behind the scenes at Utah buzzing after spring ball. But first, let's start with something that kind of got swept under the rug, I feel like, after there was some initial excitement and buzz. And that's the fact that Alex Jensen obviously hires the head coach, but Andre Miller, at one point, we thought he would be joining this staff. And it didn't end up that way. It's a really strong staff that Alex has been able to put together. We could talk about what those individuals will bring to the staff. But Alex, I'm going to ask you this first. Why is Andre Miller not a member of Alex Jensen's staff for this season?
So, I mean, I got to be a little bit careful with what I talk about with it, right? Because, I mean, here's the deal. Like, next year, he could be a part of it somehow, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. You just don't know. It was really weird and unique, okay? Because, first off, like, a lot of times, I always like to say that, anything that comes out of my mouth or, a lot of the guys that are mainstream with covering the team, there's truth to it. At one point or another, there is truth to it, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't always happen. A lot of times we might be trying to, kind of like lead people through the process, right? And so this time, I mean, you and me have talked on some of the last shows about how it was really close last year, and then Craig Smith kind of balked at it. This year, it seemed like it was a no-brainer. Alex and Andre were communicating frequently to the point where I know behind the scenes that it was said Andre's on board. I know for a fact that Andre was telling people that he was talking about where he was coaching with the Nuggets and just how it can be challenging, it can be cold, and he doesn't like the cold, right?
Yeah, the G League team, the Rapids, I believe it is.
Yeah, and he made comments to people like, yeah, but I'm good. I'll be coaching college ball next year, and so all these things. So like out of his mouth to somebody that I know and I trust, right? And so it was very interesting where, I mean, about the most that I can say is it was on and then it was off and then it was on again. And I'm thinking it was more because like boosters had kind of stepped in on some stuff. Not because Alex necessarily needed it, but just some varying circumstances. And then it was done. And really kind of what it came down to is, Alex is a well thought out person. He does his research on things and he can sit back and, he's going to be extremely prepared to see like, okay, well, this valuation on this guy, whether it's a player, whether it's a coach, right? Is it worth it? And, the more that it was kind of going on, it just wasn't adding up for this time around. And I know there were some different little things where, when it could have been Andre and Alex talking, it was the agent inserting himself in. And the agent was asking for some kind of unique things at times as well. And, some of those things weren't really sitting well with that process. And so, after a certain point, and it just kind of drags on for a minute that way. I can't blame anybody for just saying like, look, I'm just gonna, call it for now. I love you. Let's maybe look at it again down the road. It's just not going to work right now. It would be extremely valuable and effective if Andre was on the staff. At the same time, too, you've got grinders with Chilius, Schiller, and Eric Daniels. That look, Eric Daniels, it's open. I would say Eric Daniels was the one that got the spot that would have been Miller's, because Schiller, they were already planning on having a foreign guy, a foreign coach. Eric Daniels is a very effective hire, to the point where 5 years down the road, you could be looking at him as like the rising star on this coaching staff. I strongly believe that. And, and so the more Alex did his research with Andre and filling out that situation, having those conversations and everything, and the more that people came to him, going to bat for Eric Daniels, saying like, look, like, think past Donnie. Like, he's good. He is a damn good coach. He's done this with the offense here. He's done this with the defense there. He knows the state. He's coached for almost 20 years now, and so he's a valuable addition. Again, Andre would have been great. I love Utah staff. I think it is the perfect staff that Alex Jensen's put together. It's the best staff, even without Andre Miller. Okay. It's the best staff that Utah's had since the Majerus days, to be honest.
Why?
And what's up?
Why?
You know what? It's you got a expert recruiter in Chilius that connections and relationships everywhere. DeMarlo Slocum was pretty damn good that way, but at one point there were some disconnects with him and Larry not allowing him to do his thing, and so it wasn't as effective, right? Alex is the type that he trusts his guys, right? He brought these guys in for a reason. Alex is a grinder, but at the same time too, he wants to have the people in place he can trust that are going to do the most work and beneficial stuff and damage in a good way, good damage, right? For the program, and he was able to do that with the boosters were able to come to the plate with the money to be able to make it happen with a lot of these guys. I mean, you look at Wilcox. I mean, that he's valuable as hell too.
NBA GM.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, I mean, just top to bottom. I mean, Chilius again, like his resume speaks for itself with all the guys that he's coached over the years that have ended up being first round picks or lottery picks, right? Then you got Schiller, who was a G League head coach at one point, doing good things with, overseas now too, right? Great connections there. And then, he can, again, because of the G League experience, he can talk up the NBA. He can talk up all these things to the guys saying like, look, I know what it'll take to help you get there, Again, Eric Daniels, he is probably the third assistant, but I would not view him as a third assistant. Again, what you're getting with Eric Daniels is somebody that, again, he's experienced, he knows the state. He's very effective with X's and O's, even though that's going to be Alex's role, but you still have to have somebody else to fall back on and be able to get that additional advice. But you're also getting his dad at various points too, to be able to step in and be able to give that advice, do whatever's needed, to be honest, because I mean, like he's not going to tell his son no. He's not going to tell Alex fully no, right? Yeah, I mean, he likes his retirement, but again, it's such a solid staff, top to bottom. I look at staffs from the past, and there were some guys on Craig Smith's staff over the years, and not going to name them, right? But
yeah, good call. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. It's like, okay, well, he trusts you. That's why you're here. There were guys with Boylan's staff. He trusted them in a very high level assistant role, and that cost Boylan his job. Kraskowiak's staffs were good, but I just feel like the combination of the staff, along with Alex letting them do their jobs and the trust factor that he has in them, as opposed to how Larry would just, kind of, he would be, he would kind of, have of course, any head coach is going to have the final say, right? But he pretty much dictated a lot of stuff. I mean, hence what I was saying with DeMarlo, so again, it's a solid staff. I don't know that I could say that Alex would have done better by bringing on Andre, because again, like every single one of these other every single one of these other assistant coaches, they're just, you look up and down the resume, they're solid. They're extremely solid.
They are. It's a really strong staff, and it's going to have a chance to help this team climb to new heights. Would have been great to have Andre Miller a part of it from a name perspective, just having one of the best players ever to be out there. But look, name recognition only gets you so far, obviously, as a coach too. And I'm not saying anything bad about Andre. I'm just saying for a fact of, hey, Utah has a lot of these guys who have put in a lot of work at the collegiate level. I think they're going to do a great job too. So really exciting to see what this staff looks like. And obviously Utah basketball has been hard at work building their roster, just like Utah football is as well, looking towards not just the present with the transfer portal, but the future with high school recruiting. We're going to talk some recruiting and Utah basketball roster construction in one moment. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you just stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. They have that surprising insight. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save even more. Also, that easy collaboration, managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. You can take control of your finance with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. When you head over to Monarch Money and use that code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, you can head over to Monarch Money today. Alex Markham back with me here. Alex, there's been a lot made of Utah's recruiting class for football so far. Just 2 commits. Would have been third, but unfortunately, the tight end, Colby Simmons, I believe, or Simpson, excuse me. But either way, he decommits. So now you only have 2 guys. We're here in early June still. A lot of visits and things coming up. Utah is going to add some guys, but they've obviously missed on some of the top in-state talent. What do you make of everything that has transpired so far with Utah's 2026 recruiting class? For football first.
Yeah. Football, then let's talk about basketball for sure, because I love what they got going on with basketball. But football, it's going to take time. Teams are still trying to figure out how in the hell to navigate the NIL era. Let's
still waiting on the house settlement.
It's and so that's going to dictate a lot of stuff, right? But Utah usually obviously always starts off slower with their commits. They do that on purpose, and I really feel like Utah is kind of trending a lot more towards really emphasizing the transfer portal. These next bunch of years, and I mean, plenty of teams are. It's really interesting, just like the roster distribution on the new guys when it comes to that every year, right? But yeah, I mean, when it comes down to it, I mean, Colby Simpson, he was the first commit, I believe, of this class. Tight end, good ball player. His brother Alec, he actually wrote for me for a few years. Alec, he if I remember correctly, Alec was a walk-on at Arizona State, right? But then started writing for Rivals for a bit. But anyways, so yeah, I mean, I was excited because it's my guy's little brother, and then it just, as soon as I saw that he started mentioning visits, I hit up Alec. I was like, look, man, like, what's the deal here? I'm like, this is a little weird, He's like, oh no, Utah staff, they know about it, and so on and so forth. They're good with it. So I kept pushing him on it, and it's like something's up, something's coming. I think it was like a day or two later. So it wasn't a shock to me at all that he decommitted. I know that he's had a good off season, but at the same time too, it's just you gotta be careful with when you decide like, oh, okay, I'm committed, but I'm still gonna do this, And so it's a fine balance you got for both sides, right? Because I mean, Utah's coaches can say they're all right with it when they're not all right with it. I'm not saying that in this situation. I'm just saying in general. Right, just because they want to sit back and see how.
That goes for any college football program. I mean, come on, like if you're gonna tell me you're committed to me, but then you're also gonna take other visits, like I'm not gonna love that. Who would love that? Like, no, that's just because that's universal.
Oh, 100%. That's the one thing I've just consistently seen over time, and it's even crazier now with the NIL, right? Because there's this kid, kid that just committed to BYU. He had been back and forth. I think he was it committed to Oregon twice, committed to BYU
Oh my
twice.
gosh. Yes, the
He might have
former
been
he was a
committed to somebody
Timpview
else.
offensive lineman, then went to Bishop Gorman, so offensive tackle. He has a very difficult last name to pronounce, so I'm going to try. But he bounced all over the place.
And then there was a kid that Lanning was notorious for jumping in the pool with on his commitment, right? And then like not even 3 weeks later, he's decommitted. And so it's just, dude, like it's nuts, right? Because look, you can't always take the schools and the coaches at their word, because they can drop you at the drop of a hat, right? But especially with the NIL era now, anytime a kid commits, it's just like, okay, we'll see what's up in a few months. It's just it's a bizarre era that everybody's still trying to wrap their minds around. I do like the two kids that they have committed already. More high upside kids that
Green 3 stars.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes down to it, Preston Pitts, he's been playing linebacker. He's probably going to play edge at Utah. He's got that 6'4" frame, big body that, typically the guys just grow into when they hit Utah's campus, right? So he's your prototypical kid that Utah looks at that they can see and be able to project at defensive end. So there's some good intrigue there. LaGarry Mitchell, he visited this last weekend. He was a previous Boise State commit. He's only got offers from Boise State and Utah. There might be one other team, but it's not a P5 school. So Utah is his only P5. But when it comes down to it, you look back at like Jonah Ellis when Jonah was in Idaho. This kid's from Meridian. Okay. You look at the film and Jonah just dwarfed everybody. It was like he was a grown man playing football against junior high kids. That's very similar to this one. Maybe not as much, but pretty similar, and so it's harder for some teams to sit back and say, look at the film like, oh, I can take that kid because looking at his competition, right? But when it comes to Boise State and Utah's talent evaluations, you gotta trust it. I mean, their track record speaks for themselves, especially when it's Colton Swan stepping in and wanting to be all over this kid. So he's going to be an interesting one. It'll be interesting, honestly, to see what kind of weight he throws on too. See if he ends up being an edge, because he's a bigger kid. Like if he's legit 6'3", that puts him right in the middle of, potentially, having that look eventually in college, So yeah. I mean, commit wise, it's slow, but they'll be getting there. It'll be ramping up.
By the end of June, how many do you think Utah will have? If you had to ballpark guesstimate, because June's always a big recruiting month.
That's tough. That's tough, huh? I'd say 8 to 10. I mean, I'd say that's pretty typical for Utah.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna. How many guys are visiting? Is it 20? It's like 40 something, right?
Yeah, I'd have to look back at my page and my notes and everything. It's a good amount. It's a heavy amount. There's a lot of teams that already had a lot of official visitors when they were able to during the spring ball period. And Utah didn't. So they're really focusing on right now. And so lost my train of thought for a second there, but I'd say probably about 8 to 10 is the safe bet on that. And there's probably going to be some guys within that period again that commit and then decommit shortly after. Who knows who they'd be, right? But it's just kids and how they go through the process, and then how the NIL situation goes. And Utah. Oh, I remember what I was when I was saying I lost my train of thought. I was going to say this first weekend, Utah wasn't really expecting a lot out of commitments this weekend right off the bat, just because so many of them it was their first official visit. And so it'll take some time. I'm sure that a decent portion of the guys that would have visited this last weekend, which 4 of them were 4-star kids, I'm sure a decent portion will end up being Utes. So we'll have to see how the ball rolls.
We will. That'll be massive. Speaking of seeing how the ball rolls, the Utah men's basketball roster, especially for this coming season, really looks strong. A lot of intriguing transfer additions. Jakai Howard from Auburn probably being chief among them, that I think could be the biggest X factor on this team. I think it's a team that has a challenge for a big season this year in the Big 12. Easier said than done with what a stiff basketball conference it is, but at least the momentum for Utah basketball as a program is trending in the right direction. We mentioned all the staff hires already too, Alex. What do you made of the roster additions that Utah basketball has made so far?
It's the best roster Utah's had in a while.
Oh,
And it's crazy, right? Because, everybody can sit back and say, well, duh, they've got more NIL money. That's not necessarily the case right now, because what I can tell everybody is, yeah, the funds are there, but Alex is really looking at this year as a foundation year, and then being able to use those favors when it comes to the boosters. And pretty much what I've been told is there's some boosters that have flat out said, like, look, when Alex wants something, all he has to do is ask, and so again, it's really just understanding that he's trying to get that foundation this year. There's some solid guys on this team already. Okay. As soon as he gets that foundation and and that culture built, then it's time to really ramp that up and be able to throw that NIL out and be able to get some bigger guys that still make sense and fit into the program, but still bring a higher upside. Right. But yeah, and within all that stuff too, it's like, well, yeah, Craig didn't have a high NIL budget. Craig had a little bit lower NIL budget, but Craig and his group also didn't know how to manage NIL. I mean, when you got Miro Little as your highest paid NIL guy, that's not a budget problem. That's an evaluation problem. And so the system that they have with Wes Wilcox and the connections with Chilius and just everybody top to bottom. I mean, this first class is largely Chilius. And then Wilcox doing the evaluations and then going from there. It's kind of a really interesting dynamic. I know Alex is really I don't want to say obsessed, but like really, really intrigued by just the addition of Wilcox and what he feels like it can do for the program. Maybe when others don't think a GM is that crucial, Alex sees him as highly, highly crucial to the future success of this program and managing this roster. So I mean, that you mentioned it, right? Howard is somebody that I'm really excited about. He's it would have been interesting to see what his percentages were if he would have averaged, like even 5 more minutes a game, because I want to say he shot just under 42% from the 3-point line.
So,
yeah. But then when you watch his film, like some of the most exciting stuff, and he shot plenty of threes, right? There's enough of a track. There's enough of a body of work there to be able to say he's a good shooter. But then when you watch his film, oh my God, he's explosive. The way he cuts into the lane, the way he gets up, and just he's going to be. I mean, he's a mix of what Bryant Markson brought to the table back in the day, but more of a shooter, and that's going to be fun to watch because Bryant Markson was a fun athlete to watch for Utah, right? And then Chapa Moore, Elijah, that's what most people know him as, but he goes by Chapa. So man, it's nuts, Kay, because the two guys I'm talking to you about right now, Howard and Chapa, they weren't the high scorers out of the recruits that were brought in, but they're the ones that intrigued me the most. Both of them were top 100 guys, top 60 guys when it comes to rivals before their freshman year last year. And, in their limited minutes that they had, just because they were on really good teams, both of them, I mean, their percentages, they were good. They were really good. And so it's just, there's a lot of intrigue just to see those two guys take and be able to ramp up their minutes and what they can do. There's a lot of athleticism there too. It's just scary. That's so intriguing that Utah just hasn't seen that much of recently. It's been interesting these last few years. When it comes to the scorers, though, that Utah brought in, Don McHenry and Terrence Brown, those guys both average around 20 points a game. Now, here's the one thing I will say. Anytime you can get guys anytime you can get guys transferring in that are averaging 20 points a game, that's a win, okay? But you need to get them to be more efficient. Both of these guys are ball dominant, and they don't shoot the best percentages, say, from like long distance. And can it improve? Yeah, it can improve. And I mean, you look back at last year. I mean, look at the volume that Gabe Madsen had to do.
Yeah,
you know, it was one of his worst shooting years that he's had. But at the same time, had he had other people that could have picked up the slack, which they really didn't. Let's be honest there. His percentages would have been better. So that's what you're hoping for with these two guys. Is they're not, maybe one of them scores 20 points a game, but there's a chance that they both might average 12 to 15. You just want those percentages better. And then you want Howard and Moore to be the guys that, are carrying the flame for the program and getting all this excitement for the future, and everybody seeing like, okay, this program's revived. Outside of that, there's a lot of guys that just fit roles, right? There's bangers, there's physical guys that if you look up and down this roster, I want to say outside of McHenry, everybody is lengthy.
Yeah.
Athletic. It's athletic, physical, lengthy guys. And Utah deliberately went after that with a purpose. That's the type of player Alex wants in his program. And so that's stuff to get excited about right there in the first place. They still need – I had been saying that they needed a center. And then I had some conversations with people close to the program. They don't view getting a 6'11 plus basketball player as a necessity. And a lot of it has to do with just kind of how the Big 12 has gone. There's not a lot of highly effective big men playing center in the Big 12. A lot of them are like 6'7" to 6'9" and just bangers, physical bangers, right? And Utah feels like they have that. If something comes along, great. I know that they have a kid that's going to be coming in on an official visit. At least he was planning on it. That's a foreign point guard. So we'll see how that goes, because the one thing I really would like to see them get is just a pass first point guard, just a pure point guard. Because out of these guys, McHenry, Brown, they're point guards. But and I can't remember. I think it was Brown. Brown had a really bad assist to turnover ratio. So do you want him being the lead point guard on that? Again, we'll see when it comes to volume, right? That's the key word. That's the key word with these guys, the volume. But yeah, if Utah can get a true point guard in, I think that's just icing on the cake for this first class. And where are they going to finish? They're not going to finish at the bottom of the Big 12. They're not going to be at the top, but they're going to cause a lot of teams problems, and you just add Alex Jensen in there as the coach. And you look at what Will Hardy's done for the Jazz, even when they were supposed to be tanking, which is a sore subject for everybody right now. Right. But, Will Hardy makes the Jazz better.
He does.
They won like 16, 17 games this last year. If they didn't have Will Hardy on the sidelines, they probably win 10.
Yeah.
And so Alex is going to be very similar. And that's what's going to be fun to watch, and it's going to put a lot of butts in the seats. And what's nuts to me right now is Utah football should have a pretty successful bounce back season next year, but there's more excitement for people wanting to go to the basketball games now than the football games.
You feel that?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%. I've had conversations with people that have had football tickets for years that they're starting to kind of fade on, really wanting to be at those games and just thinking like, oh, wow. Well, we can, we still love our team, but It's just, it's turning into a headache, and we can just, watch it from home with the access and stuff like that. Basketball wise, well, now, I mean, here's the other thing to that too. It's nothing against the coaching staff. It's nothing against the program. It's more the NIL era.
The prices and all. I get that. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not even that. It's
Sure.
People used to love being able to watch guys for 3 to 4 years and know that's my guy. I'm riding with them, get their gear, support them, and know that they're going to see their development for 3 to 4 years. And that is so gone by the wayside in football now. That's the problem. Okay. So that's the problem. So it's not going to be just a Utah thing. That's going to be a thing for a lot of places. Okay. Now, where it's different with basketball is Larry prepped Ute fans years ago for the NIL era, kind of, to an extent, right? With players going in and out. The reason I say that is because, I mean, on average, he probably kept 2 to 4 players a year in his last handful of years. And so Utah fans got used to that with basketball. And now they got one of their guys in that they've just been clamoring for, and they're going to be all about it, And so basketball, quite honestly, it sounds crazy, right? And I'd love for you to get other people's opinions, explain it the same way that I just explained it to you because of how the NIL goes with the guys coming and going. But yeah, I mean, I feel like there's more excitement and intrigue just around Utah's basketball right now. And that's nothing against Utah's football team. It's just circumstances, circumstances that are out of Utah football's control.
Yeah, and we talk a lot of football on this show, so I'll say that too. So my ecosystem more revolves. I hear more about probably football hype than I do for basketball hype for that reason. But I'd be interested for you guys in the comments below. Let us know, what are you more excited about this season, Utah football or Utah basketball? Would love to hear your guys' thoughts there. Alex, always a blast when you stop by. Please let everyone know where they can find you at.
Yeah, as always, interact with me on Twitter at the most, or X, right, whatever we want to call it, at A Markham Rivals. I always love the friendly banter, and then from there, mutenation.com, part of Rivals. So just head on over, interact, let's have some fun, and it's going to be a fun football season. The Utah's going to come in a little bit under the radar this year, but it's a good squad that they've got put together. So basketball wise, that's going to be some more fun. So it's nice, JT, man. I know you and me have talked about this, but it's nice to finally have more than football that you want to talk about and want to talk about on a consistent basis.
I absolutely agree with that.
And basketball's bringing eyeballs now. So.
1000% agree with that. Excited to see what both these programs are going to do in the fall. Just like I'm always excited when I get you to hop on. Thanks again, Alex.
Oh, man. Appreciate you. Take care.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. Back with you tomorrow, talking the latest in Utah football, Utah basketball, and Utah athletic. But